Well, let's talk about Ratchet and Clank and if I think it deserves or it is primed for Game of the Year. But first, we're going to have a little message from Dalit on how you can support the YouTube channel.
Enjoying the video? Remember to like and sub. Helps out the channel a bunch, and we're grateful for everyone we get.
But for you guys on Twitter, you can either hit the follow button, or I have a Tales of thing, Tales of Marathon going to be happening after I finish Scarlet Nexus. And if I get to a certain point in these in this donation goal, then I'll either add Abyss or Grace's F to the list. So, does Ratchet and Clank deserve to get Game of the Year this year, or is it primed to get it this year? Because I mean, there's a point where like if it deserves to get the Game of the Year, or if it's literally the only thing that's releasing this year, then it kind of doesn't have much of a competition. But I wanted to hit on a few parts. I'm gonna preface this with I'm no expert in gaming on how Gaming of the Year actually works, and Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is the first Ratchet and Clank game that I have ever given a fair chance to. I've sat down and actually played it fully. I played a little bit of the reboot, and while I liked the reboot a little bit, you know, Ratchet and Clank games were usually never my thing. I was more of a Jack and Daxter fan. But what got me thinking about if Ratchet and Clank is going to be Game of the Year, or if it's just primed to get Game of the Year. I was streaming the game one day, and a friend of the channel came in and was like, "Are you enjoying the game?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "The game's really, really good." I was talking to my friend too, and he said he really liked the game too. And then he said, "Ratchet and Clank games are always good games." That's true. Ratchet and Clank games are normally good games. There are some Ratchet and Clank games that aren't good Ratchet and Clank games, but they're still at its core good games. And I thought about that, and I was like, "Yeah." And then he was like, "They're always good games, but they're never Game of the Year good." And my instinct to answer back to that was, except for this one. Except for Rift Apart, right? And he agreed. He's like, "Yeah, my friend said the same thing, except for Rift Apart." And then I got to thinking, I was like, you know, past games that were like Game of the Year worthy, you have in 2017, Breath of the Wild, which that's its own fucking basket. And whether I agree or disagree with that is beyond here or there. Then in 2018, you had God of War. And in 2019, you had Sekiro. 2020 was The Last of Us Part 2, which again is also one of those things where I'm like, okay, that happens. And then you think of what's the reasons for these games getting Game of the Year. Well, Breath of the Wild had so much hype behind it, and it's a Legend of Zelda game. That game like what I mean by primed for getting Game of the Year, Breath of the Wild was primed to get Game of the Year. A lot of other games did come out that year that I think probably deserved to get it. More like Horizon Zero Dawn. I think that game is way more interesting to play than Breath of the Wild. But there was no way that Breath of the Wild wasn't going to get it. 2018, you had God of War. God of War pushed the limits of the PlayStation 4. It did so much. It was one of the last games that really ever actually come out for the PlayStation 4, and it pushed the absolute limits. Then you have Sekiro, which kind of defined its genre. It was a new type of action RPG that was just overall really good. And then you think about Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. It doesn't push the limits of the PS5, but it definitely shows you what the PS5 can do. I think one of the developers over at Insomniac said Ratchet and Clank just scratches the surface of what the PS5 can do. I mean, that's more than likely true. This is one of the first just PS5 games. That's kind of scary to think about because what they do in this game is just ridiculous, period. Does it redefine its genre? No. If you played a Ratchet and Clank game, you pretty much played any Ratchet and Clank game. The controls are definitely a bit different especially from when I went from the reboot to this game. The controls are definitely a lot different. Was there hype surrounding? There's a lot of hype surrounding it. There's a lot of hype surrounding it. And then, I can't even compare it to The Last of Us Part 2 because not only was there an immense hype surrounding that game. That game was just socially on a level that no other game can honestly meet. that game was also one that was just primed to win Game of the Year. The video I'll be showing here in this video is just the first mission. It starts off like most Ratchet and Clank games, where you get a small little type of obstacle course. In like in all tropes, it gets interrupted by your arch nemesis, which is in this game, it's Dr. Nefarious. And halfway through like this obstacle course, you get introduced into pretty much the plot device for this game, which is the Dimensionator, which allows you to do pretty much everything that happens in this game. Dr. Nefarious steals the Dimensionator, and you go through the sequence of events that includes grinding on these rails, going through the entire city, showing you how like graphically amazing this game is. Then when you catch up to Dr. Nefarious, you shoot the Dimensionator, which breaks open rifts throughout the whole entire city. Pretty much is the whole reason that the game happens. And then you get introduced to probably the second coolest mechanic in the game, which is the pulling yourself to different sections of the map rift thing that just shows you. I mean, it's like basic teleporting, honestly. When you think about it, you have like in Halo 1, you had your teleporter, you went through it and you popped out on the other side. All right. In Halo, it's a bit more jarring. In Rift Apart, you get the animation of you grabbing the rift and pulling it towards you. You see the absence of loading, and you go from one side of a map to another. Well, not like a whole map, but like, one side of the area that you're at to the other side. And it's just ridiculous. The next part you get introduced to is after you beat Nefarious, after you have a proper boss fight with him, you get thrown through different dimensions. Now, at first it looks just like a regular cutscene, but all the cutscenes you see in this game are in-engine cutscenes. They're in the game cutscenes. Like, they're actually loaded into the game. Every dimension you fall through is another area of the game that is fully loaded. And it's fully loaded all at the same time. And it's just a set piece that shows you everything that you're going to be doing throughout the entire game. Whether you're Kit and Rivet, or you're, Ratchet and Clank. Or at certain times in the game, you're Ratchet and Kit, and the other times you're Rivet and Clank. It's just ridiculous. It's a set piece that perfectly lines up the game for you. It just it's one of those things that like you wouldn't think it's unprecedented, and it probably isn't unprecedented. There are other games that probably show like exactly everything that the game's going to be about within the first 20 minutes. But this one just does it in a way where, I don't know, it's like watching a Pixar movie, like a good Pixar movie. You're actually playing the Pixar movie, and there's just a type of writing and cinematography to it that kind of just like blows your mind within the first 20 minutes. And that's what I think, like, if this game came out regularly in another year where a bunch of other games are coming out, this would be an easily top contender for Game of the Year. And now I want to talk about, is this game just primed to win this year? We all know that COVID's happened the past couple of years, so stuff's been delayed. Stuff hasn't been able to come out on time. And so we have games that, like, the new God of War is supposed to come out, but it's not going to come out this year. It's going to be next year. Breath of the Wild's already been confirmed to come out next year. Chances are Halo Infinite comes out this year, but there's a chance that it doesn't come out before the Game of the Year cutoff. There's also a chance that Horizon Forbidden West doesn't come out before the Game of the Year cutoff. We don't even know when the Game of the Year cutoff is. It's usually somewhere between the November 10th and the November 20th or 19th time frame. So, there's a chance that SMT5 comes out. But that's also a very niche game. While it is like a very popular game, it's also like it's very niche. So there's a chance that it's in the running, but there's also a chance that it just doesn't. It's not as popular as Ratchet and Clank. It doesn't have like the name Ratchet and Clank does. Now, Halo Infinite could come out before it, and then if it ends up being really good, it could easily take it. Same with Horizon Forbidden West. That we've already seen what that game looks like. That game looks phenomenal, and if that game comes out before the cutoff, it could easily take it away from Ratchet and Clank. But we don't have release dates for those games yet. And normally, if you don't have a release date for a game that within like 6 months of it coming out, it usually doesn't come out within that 6 months. have been some obvious, like, you know, exceptions to that. But I don't believe Halo Infinite's going to come out before November, or even in November. Horizon Forbidden West, again, could come out. I still don't think it's going to come out before the cutoff. So there's a point in time where, like, I only think of, like, 1 or 2 other games that could compete with Ratchet and Clank at the moment, and one of them is Monster Hunter Rise. While that is just on the Switch, it is very good and very popular. It's very accessible too, so it could be in the top runnings for Game of the Year. That's literally the only game this year I think that can actually take it. You have games like Returnal, which are, like, technically really good, but I don't think enough people got into it. Resident Evil 8 was also good, but it's also one of those games where it's like, it's good, but if the game was a third person over the shoulder, it probably would have been better. But it just doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't feel Game of the Year. All right. And Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart does. And at the end of the day, that's what I'm saying. I think Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is going to get Game of the Year. Now, I could be wrong. I'm 100% could be wrong, because, you know, like I said, I'm not an expert. I don't know. This is just how I feel. I could be easily surprised if it got it, because, again, Halo could come out, Horizon could come out, and just throw a wrench in my idea. But I, again, don't think that's going to happen. I also like to preface it, like, I don't know the technical aspects of what goes on under the hood with Ratchet and Clank. If you guys are, like, looking for that, you can go to Digital Foundry, or you can go to Gigaboots. They would know a lot more than I do when it comes to that. I can just only tell you what I feel from playing the game. I played it, I beat it. This is, like I said, this is the first Ratchet and Clank game that I've sat down, give a God's honest try to, and I enjoyed every minute of it. And that's pretty much all I can say. Like, this was the first Ratchet and Clank that I could actually sit down and do it, and honestly, it did one of its jobs, which was get new people into the series. And for that, I think it could easily get Game of the Year. Anyway, that's where I'm gonna end this at. This was just like a freeform thing that I wanted to record, but, like, recording it not live or whatever, I just felt like, you know, it'd be more stunted and everything. I'd try to make it sound like super professional, and this just kind of feels better. It feels like I'm, like, ranting at the wind. In the end, even if it doesn't make Game of the Year, I think it's one of those games that you 100%, if you have a PS5, need to play. And if you have a PS5 and you're not playing this game, you don't deserve your PS5 and you need to give it back. That may be, like, one of those takes that, like, you know, oh well, you know, you shouldn't say stuff like that. No. This is one of those games, if you're not playing Ratchet and Clank, it's literally 10 to 15 hours tops if you're not trying to, like, plat it. It's worth the price tag it has, which is $70. It honestly feels like a masterpiece. And whatever Insomniac did to make this game run the way it does is phenomenal. So yeah, in the end of the day, play it. That's it. Goodbye.
Before you go, remember to like, comment, and sub to us. Not only does it help out the channel and let us know what you're into, but it also makes you 100% cooler than everybody else. I checked with Aqua. It's definitely true.